Since we're on the topic of the divestment of the schools, we are actually having quite a difficult experience in Ballyfermot with the divestment of schools and the amalgamation of schools. And I just think that there needs to be a bit more forward planning about why and how we're doing, how we're actually carrying it through. Because when you talk to parents, the vast majority of them are for non-ethos based education, but schools often carry out surveys to see how the parents are responding. And the surveys are online, and the surveys, like most surveys, get a very low respondent rate. And the respondent rate they get tends to be, I want my kids to grow up in a Catholic school, because the respondent rate is those being positive to the status quo. So I think we need to find a different tool to ascertain how the population in general feels about non-ethos based education. My own view is, and has been for a long time, is the view of people before profit, and indeed we have a bill sitting in the waiting room for a long, long time for the government to bring in a non-ethos based sex education programme and consent programme that would allow for divestment to happen much more freely, and that would mean that if parents want their children to have religious education, then they send them to a religious class, but otherwise the school is non-religious. That's the easiest way to proceed. If you're Muslim and you want your kids to have a Muslim education, they go to a Muslim class. If you're Catholic, likewise. So we need to think about this much more clearly and be much more proactive as a state in saying this will happen, and it will happen in the lifetime of this government, I would hope, Taoiseach, given however short or long that lifetime is left.
Some deputies raised the issue of reconfiguration, and I think the most important view, and I know people have different views on that, is that we try to respect the wishes of parents, and indeed the parents of future pupils of particular schools, and also take into account the views of staff. I'm somebody who supports greater choice around education and education ethos. So I appreciate that's easier to do in an urban area than in a rural area. But I know in my own constituency, for example, we've Educate Together national schools and secondary schools, we've Catholic Archdiocese schools, we've a Church of Ireland school, we've Gael Scoilina, we've a number of community national schools. And after a survey of parents, in Tyrrellstown, a decision was made to establish a new Lacala secondary school, and similarly in the Castleknock area, a new secondary school which will be formally opened soon under the patronage of the Edmund Rice Trust. So I think it is important to take into account what parents actually want, what their wishes are, and I don't agree with forced secularisation of our education system. If a school is working well and parents are happy with how it's working, then I think that view should be respected. In terms of more information, the Department of Education sets out that there are now 166 multi-denominational or interdenominational primary schools. That's an increase of 7 on last year. And it is part of a longer-term trend, with the number of multi-denominational primary schools rising from 85 to 165. That's an increase of nearly 50% in the past 10 years. At post-primary level, multi-denominational schools have increased from 16, or rather by 16, from 343 in 2011 to 359 now. And during the period from 2011, when the current arrangements on the establishment of new schools were introduced, 53 new primary schools and 50 new post-primary schools have been established. Of these, 52 of the 53 are multi-denominational and 1 is interdenominational. And when it comes to the post-primary schools, there are 50 new ones, of which 44 are multi-denominational, 5 Catholic and 1 Church of Ireland.
Thank you, Taoiseach. We now move